Okay, so in the previous series of classes, we've discussed how using the steps that Rebbe Nachman has informed us of in our practice of prayer, our heartfelt and organized prayer, how we can achieve access to this divine city called Mishpat. And Mishpat is the place from which all human emotions are sent, both the emotions in the guy who's praying and everybody else's emotions too. It's a particularly important place. On the way to finding this place, the Yetzer Hara has various tactics that we've discussed in some depth, and as well as remedies for these tactics. But up until this point, the Yetzer Hara has only targeted the guy who's praying, not wanting that guy to get access to the city of Mishpat. It's a place of great leverage. But now that we have accessed the city of Mishpat with Rebbe Nachman's help, it's not just about us anymore. This is the place from which all human emotions are derived. Now the problem is, it's overrun by goons. Yetzer Hara makes trouble in this particular place. And this is why people in the world have mixed emotions. We sometimes have good emotions. We sometimes have emotions that we deliberately are utilizing to help us and to help others. And sometimes we have other sorts of emotions that just kind of came over us. Where'd that come from? Machshava zaras, the alien thoughts. Where did those come from? So then Rebbe Nachman hinted to us, as we explored in the commentary of Rashi and the verses referenced by Rebbe Nachman, that what we have to do once we reach this angelic city that's overrun by goons is to become a judge there. We have to learn the law, we have to learn the Shulchan Aruch, not with the intention that I'm going to go tell people what to do, but with the intention that I'm going to really, really know my way around, and I'm going to help to set this city of Mishpat straight. We can set this world straight, and it's not a bad thing to try to do that, but it doesn't have as much leverage as this place of Mishpat from which all human emotions are derived. So we have to be so good at law that we can paskin on emotions. We should go to the Rav. We should ask the Rav about emotional issues, about how do I pray to Hashem with a proper attitude, and personal questions like that. That's really letting Kedusha in on a deep level, not just a ritual detail that maybe I don't know exactly what these commentaries said and things, so the Rav is smarter than me, but also the Rav is holier than me. And so the Rav is going to help me to connect every aspect of myself, including personal things like prayer and how I should feel about certain things with Hashem. So once we've accomplished this goal, or at least once we're on the way to accomplishing this goal of becoming a judge in the city of Mishpat, Rebbe Nachman says, Azai yisaber enanim demechasen al eino. Then the clouds are going to clear away, the clouds that are covering up our sort of eye-to-eye connection with Hashem, and these clouds are responsible for distorting the messages that Hashem sends to us, which are only positive. We must believe that, even if we don't see it, because the reason we don't see it is because there are these distorting clouds, because the city of Mishpat is overrun by goons. So, once the city of Mishpat has sufficient good judges, they're kosher, they're smart, they're good at their jobs, they're alacritous, then these clouds will begin to clear away. And Rebbe Nachman then brings us a pasuk, Ki ayin ba'ayin yirau b'shuv Hashem tzion. In an eye-to-eye sort of way, we will see Hashem's return to Tzion, which Tzion we've noticed before as a moniker for the city of Mishpat. So we've discussed the idea of this city and of these clouds before, but we haven't really discussed the idea of eyes so much. Why does Rebbe Nachman bring us this, especially this double language of there's these two eyes here? So this pasuk is a pasuk from Yeshaya, and the prophecies of Yeshaya are phrased in a very poetic way and are not always so simple. It's not a simple story. They contain deep allusions that maybe even the pashat, even the regular meaning of the pasuk is not so clear. So we're going to explore two midrashim that maybe will help us get a better sense of what this pasuk means and what Rebbe Nachman is telling us by bringing this pasuk. At least he didn't bring the whole pasuk, but the words that he chose to bring of the pasuk. So the first is from Midrash Tanchuma, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'olam hazeh al shehu royin es kavoidi hayu kalim. Anybody in this world who sees Hashem's full glory, they're not going to make it. Shnetmar brings a pasuk in the Midrash, Ki loy yirani ha'adam v'chai. Nobody's ever seen me and survived the experience. Okay, so this is one thing. So I get that when I go to this divine city that I'm a newcomer here and now I've got to set the place straight. Oy, this is kind of a challenging task I've been assigned with here. So I don't know, should I even go there? I mean, Rebbe Nachman is telling me to, but let's see what it says in Zohar. So we have another midrash here on the same pasuk. Tana. If this eye closes, nobody's going to make it. So it's a high kashya. It seems like the two midrashim are indicating almost opposite things. If you can't live without it, you can't live without it. If I see this place, then I don't know if I'm going to survive the experience. And if I don't go see this place, then I'm maybe not going to survive the onslaught of emotions that I don't have any control of and I don't know where they're coming from. So I guess I have to go there, but it sounds daunting. How do we work out the contradiction in these two midrashim? Now, one of the klalim, one of the general rules in the Likutei Moharan is that Rebbe Nachman knows all the Torah, and so whatever we are aware of in Torah, he is intending that we consider all of these commentaries and midrashim and things like that in our reading of the simple words of Likutei Moharan. So what is the message that we are supposed to get from this contradiction? That Rebbe Nachman has placed this before us for our consideration, these two contrasting midrashim. And one thing we could do is try to think of it on our own, but as we've discussed, the idea that we should go to the Rav for even deep emotional sorts of questions, certainly for a question like this, we can also go to the Rav. So here we have the writings of the Sefer Machane Dan, from one of the great Breslovers of the Bender family, I believe, an important family in Breslov. And here's a sample of some of his writing that we'll explain. This that the Tzadik is able to control the situation, he does a good job. He's already there, he's in the city of Mishpat, he sees what's going on there, and he's able to do what he's supposed to do. Where does he get this ability? Why don't I have it? What's different about the Tzadik and me? By understanding, learning about the ways of Tzadikim, we can take out very good life advice. Oh, this is a thing I should aim for. I can achieve it or not, but this is a thing I should aim for sure. So he says, Tzadikim are able to hang in the city of Mishpat. And what gives them this ability? Hurak al yedei shemevatel atmoi b'chol inyane hazeman. It's because the tzaddik is not concerned about time. Now, there's a lot of concepts of bittul, becoming sort of translucent to elikus, to divinity, and becoming a chariot to divinity, that we're not trying to, I don't have my own agenda here, someone who's really bittul, it's just Hashem's agenda going through them, and they're purely an agent. Of course, we know anything I can think of, Hashem can think of something better. So this is not so scary a proposal to be bittul. It sounds kind of like an attractive idea. I'd like to have all better ideas than the ones I have now, and all better emotions and actions than the ones I have now. Sounds kind of fun. There's a specific aspect of this bittul that is being discussed here, which is concerning time. Now, the question is, the tzaddik does great in the city of Mishpat, and I have a hard time. What's the difference? This thing about being concerned with time. So another way to express that is that the guns, so to speak, the Yetzer Hara, as it makes trouble in the land of Mishpat, I think kilkul is the word used in Likutei Moharan, it sends us dilemmas concerning time. We have this large, daunting task. And I don't even know if I have enough time to become a Rav, a judge, a shayfet, a dayan in this world, this physical world, kal v'chomer, in this heavenly dimension of Mishpat. It's beings I can barely conceive of. I have to become a judge up there. So if you had forever, you could do it, right? Okay, but do I have forever? So this daunting feeling of that I don't have enough time to do it, he seems to be suggesting that this is the primary obstacle. And the tzaddik is not concerned with this. So there's two tshuvas, two responses to this concern about time that the Yetzer Hara wants to send us once we've achieved this particular level where it's now incumbent upon us to become a Rav. And so the first tshuva is, I'll start with the mashal. Back in the day, when I used to do martial arts, the coaches would consistently say, all the coaches would say, So that guy that just beat you in the competition, why did he beat you? And the student makes up all sorts of, well, he had better protein powder, he had a better mindset, he had like just that one little detail in his move, he was really athletic. No, that's not the reason. He spent more time on the math than you did. That's why. He came 15 minutes early and left 15 minutes late every class. That's why he beat you. It's very simple. And you can't beat the coach. Why? So you can't argue with the coach because you can't beat the coach. What do I know next to a guy I can't beat practically? Why can't I beat the coach? Because he spent more time at it than I did. So to get a closer look at this dynamic of time, we'll bring it in the walls of Kedusha. Sometimes you've got a situation where you've got a guy who's been religious for 30 years and he's been trying to figure out the Talmud for 30 years and he's sitting there with a guy who's been religious for 5 years and that kid's explaining the Talmud to him. And it's playing in the older guy's head like, man, I've been at this, how does this kid how did he do it? I've been at this for so much longer than he has. Okay, you're counting years. It's not very good math though. Let's zoom in. How many hours a day do you learn? Oh, you learn 1 hour a day? Well, he learns 10 hours a day. So actually he's learned nearly twice as much as you have in this amount of time. So it should be no surprise. Okay, so this is the first thing, 10 hours a day. That's a very daunting amount of time. Let's zoom in further. What's happening during that hour? One guy learns an hour, another guy learns an hour. This guy's teaching the Siri, this guy's sitting in the shir. Why? Well, how many minutes out of that hour was the guy who's sitting in the shir not teaching the shir learning? How many minutes out of that hour was he getting another coffee, or adjusting the cushion in his chair, or opening the window, or looking on his phone, or talking about other matters, even thinking about other matters? Maybe he was learning for an hour, maybe he was learning for 15 minutes, probably somewhere in between. The other guy, he gets more out of that hour. Okay, so it seems like a fairly mundane message we're saying here about time management, but let's zoom in further. In the course of 1 minute, one's mind can go all sorts of different places. The mind is a fast, breezy thing. This is part of the reason why we want to make our avoida in the heart, because the heart's it's like a rock. Hopefully we turn it into flesh, but it starts off like a rock, like Lev Basar is Isis Bretzlev. But it starts off as a rock. So the heart is a heavy place and it doesn't move too easily. But the mind is not a heavy place. It's breezy up there. Both the ruach and the neshama, these words for the higher level of the soul that are gradually more intellectual, both refer to wind. So even in the course of 1 minute, guy who's teaching the shir, he learned 1 minute. The guy who was listening to the shir, he learned 25 seconds out of that minute, or something in between. I'm making these numbers off the top of my head. Still sounds a little mundane. Seems kind of didactic and weird. So let's zoom in further. Within the course of 1 second, it goes on, and it essentially is an infinite thing. So while we don't necessarily have access as limited beings, and by the way, it's a great mercy that Hashem made us limited beings for many reasons, but with this respect, we don't actually have unlimited time, although we do have sort of pseudo-unlimited time. A guy who's relatively a kid can teach a guy who's much older and seemingly more experienced if you just actually do the math. But this is only the first tshuva. Because even if you tell me that I can use my time so much more effectively, it'll be like a guy who's been learning 5 times, 6 times as long, so to speak. Still, I have to deal with dark angels here. Come on, these things are 10,000, a million years. I have no conception of how old these things are. So do I really, in my lifetime, I have time to become a Rav in heaven, even in this world? Even if I use my time that much more, I'm not a mathematician. I can't do the math if that'll really work out. So there's a better tshuva. Okay, so maybe you won't. But it's still, every step you do is good. Every step you do is, if everybody in the world got a little bit smarter about their emotions, just a tiny bit, how much better a world it would be. Think about it, if one guy becomes a grand master of emotions, it doesn't do nearly as much as if everybody becomes just slightly better. This is a billion people. One person. How can it even be compared? Not to mention the interaction between these people. So it's always a worthwhile endeavor. There's this idea that's brought in Likutei Moharan 4 of Ish Chacham Yechaparana, that someone who is very learned and wise can atone for the sins of others. And so when someone does a sin and then they have some subconscious guilty feelings about it, it's not just a thing in their head, it's actually a goon, mamish, up in the city of Mishpat, sending bad emotions at them. And this chacham, what he's able to do is he's able to go up there and he's able to deal with this goon. But it's not an on and off switch. Big goons you need a big chacham for, but a little goons, if I can just get a little bit better at Talmud and I can daven in an organized and heartfelt way that I can get the keys to the city of Mishpat, there's a lot of little goons that guy can take care of. So it's, again, ish chacham yechaparena is not a light switch. The more of an ish chacham you are, the more chaparena you can do, the more atonement that this person can bring. Then he continues in the Sefer, as we said, that Tzadik is not concerned about these issues of time. He knows even a little bit's worth it, even if he can't do it in a lifetime. Plus, he knows that 1 minute can be 5 minutes can be a tremendous amount of time if used properly. If used entirely, I would say, and not sort of other things use that time, but I use that time, right? Or the Ish Chacham anyway, who am I? So the tzaddik, he's aware of this thing of time. It's just not. It's not like he's mentally sound. It's not that he's not connected with time. He doesn't know it exists. He's organized. In order to get access to this city, we have to daven at set times. This is part of, as we've discussed in previous classes, how we regulate our emotional energies in a very precise way. So the Yetzer Hara doesn't have any nika on them. And it can't cause us to become upset about dumb things and happy about dumb things. We use our emotions in an intentional, good, helpful way. And so we have to be very organized about this. So with the Kal V'chomer, the Tzadik is doing great up there in Mishpat. Who's a role model for all of us, is very good about his time. But it's just, it doesn't bother him the time. She'ein lo shum histaklus be'richas aman hagolus. Another aspect of this is that the tzaddik does not spend a lot of time ruminating about the past and how long I've struggled to understand the Talmud and how long haven't had a Beis Mikdash and how long I've been less happy than I would like to be and how long my advice has been mediocre and whatever. They had this how long conversation. The tzaddik doesn't get into that. It's not a useful conversation. It's machshav zaras. So. Well, what does the tzaddik think about instead, Rebbe Nachman? Says, "V'chavar achshav eini roi rak habechina shel gabe ishapich." We're going to flip it on its head. We're going to go up there, and every second of time that I use to get better at this avoida of paskening about emotions and going up to the city of Mishpat and in prayer and then like setting things straight, even a little bit, that switches the dynamic. It's a little bit like when you have like a task list. When you do one item on the task, you get it checked off on the list, it feels good for two reasons. One is because, well, I got that thing done, but two is now I have a shorter list now. It's a less intimidating list. I feel like at each of these things I can give more attention to. So it has this sort of exponential effect. So how do you deal with the infinite or the semi-infinite? Well, you have to have the power of this exponential effect on your side without any sort of drain here. So this is the attitude of the tzaddik toward this time accusation that the Yetzer Hara wants to make against him. Gabi yishapech. Every little thing I do is going to flip this situation on its head. So every second I claim back, I get another second, right? That's not only one more second for the side of good, it's one less second for the side of the Yetzer Hara. So it actually piles up really quick. It's actually a really encouraging process for one who chooses and merits to get involved in it. So perhaps we can better understand now the dilemma in the two midrashim. So the Zohar says that you can't live without this city. A guy's got to go up there and take care of business. We're talking about real life. The Zohar is always talking about that's like being physically alive, but like doing it right and having a positive effect on ourselves and others and a godly effect. And that's what the Zohar means by life. Fine. So, but then let's go to a perhaps more mundane, or at least more approachable for most people level of discussing things, which is a regular midrash, not a Kabbalistic midrash, where we read before that someone who goes to the city of Mishpat, it's kind of an intimidating place. If somebody sees it, they might not make it. But that's only in Olam Hazeh. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu b'Olam Hazeh. But it won't always be like that. B'chavoidi al kol Yisrael v'hein ro'in oiz v'chayin le'olam. However, in the future, and we'll talk about that briefly, although I think probably you already know what I'm going to say about that, given that we've talked about time so much here. In the future, when Hashem returns to the city of Mishpat, of Zion here, and it's a happy place, and everybody gets only good emotions from it, that'll be great. And then we're going to be able to see this place just fine once we overcome this dilemma of time, as we've discussed, as the Sefer Machane Dan of Bender has so helpfully informed us about how Tzadik can do what they do. And this is why, perhaps, in the Midrash Tanchuma, it says, La'asad Lavoy. Sounds like a long time away for guys worried about time. Any questions?
No. I have a lot of questions.